Greetings and welcome to the Animal Wellness Podcast, the official podcast of Animal Wellness Action. Hi, I'm your host, Joseph Grove. On this show, we talk about animals from the perspective of people who care about them and have the ability to improve their lives by influencing culture and supporting laws and regulations accordingly. To stay up to date with all of our news and information, subscribe to this podcast, receive our free newsletters and more, visit animalwellnessaction.org. Normally, Wayne Pacelli and Marty Irby are both with me. However, Wayne is off on an adventure, but it is certainly no consolation prize to have Marty only with me. Marty is the executive director of Animal Wellness Action and its chief lobbyist in D.C. Usually we go straight into a legislative update with Marty, but we want to be super respectful of our guest time today, so we'll move that to the end of the show and kick right off with her. That guest today is Representative Nancy Mace. She is an American politician serving as the U.S. Representative for South Carolina's 1st Congressional District. She's held the office since 2021. Her district includes much of the state's share of the East Coast, from Charleston to Hilton Head Island. And I just learned this. That's called the Low Country. I never knew that. Yeah.
Yes, that is our nickname. And you can't see me, but I have a beautiful picture of the Low Country. We have a lot of islands, a lot of coastal, a lot of environment and wildlife here as well.
Yeah. So no, it's beautiful, and I've never been to South Carolina, and that your photo and your work certainly makes me want to make it a vacation destination. In 1999, she was the first woman to graduate from the Corps of Cadets program at the Citadel. From 2018 to 2020, she represented the 99th district in the South Carolina House of Representatives, covering Hanahan. Am I saying that right?
Yep, Hanahan.
All right. Well, all right. Very good. Northeast Mount Pleasant and Daniel Island. She is the first Republican woman ever to be elected to Congress from South Carolina. So, and Representative Mace, I've seen you many times post on social media or be seen with Marty on his posts, and I got to say thank you. Most people won't be shown with Marty. They won't do it.
I doubt that. I highly doubt that.
So I don't know what he's paying you, but thank you. We appreciate that.
I'll go on anytime he asks, and sometimes I ask to go on. I'm like, hey, this would be a good time to do a video. Let's do one of these again. So he's been a great voice for animal rights for a very long time. Yeah.
And obviously your involvement with some of the issues we hope to discuss today indicate that you are a great friend of animals as well. And I suppose my first question to kind of kick us off before we talk about your work against the export of birds for cockfighting, your work on the banning of mink farming, the FDA Modernization Act, is I think most people are errantly, but nonetheless surprised when they hear of many people on the conservative side of the aisle be so active on animal welfare issues. I think that's an unfair ideological perspective, but it's a common one. What do you say to people when they say, "Gosh, why are you so involved with animals?"
I actually hear that a lot. And I again, if you could see me, I'm at my house today. I would go run upstairs to my daughter's room. I gave her a book that my grandmother gave me when I was like 4 or 5. It's this bright pink album. And my grandmother used to cut out images from the newspaper from Hampton, South Carolina, a very small town in rural South Carolina. And it was one of the first gifts I had as a kid. Is one of my only memories I have of my grandmother. And it's this entire album of all this wildlife that mostly color and black and white photos from the newspapers. I gave it to my daughter, and we still have it today. It's like 40 years old. But I've had a love of animals like my entire life. And I grew up with 7 pets in our house, 3 cats, 3 dogs, and a parrot named Julio who talked to us. And I spent a lot of time outdoors with my dad. My dad was a hunter growing up as well, and would take me outdoors all the time. We go camping, we go fishing, and we're just part of that sort of conservation lifestyle where he would go out and plant fields and grow food, and then we would eat the food and, that sort of thing. But, I kind of grew up in the outdoors and that kind of environment. And I was a state lawmaker before I came to Congress. But I was a state lawmaker for 3 years. And then in Congress, I've been able to do so much more with animal rights at the federal level. And Marty certainly has helped in that regard, and communicating with our office on the opportunities that are there. But I've been trying to find ways, and this is before I even got elected, but and working across the aisle. And although I am Republican, it was Reagan, who's one of my idols and I think one of the greatest presidents we've ever had, always encouraged Republicans and conservatives to reach across the aisle and find ways where we could work together. And I found that that is true with puppies, pot, and Britney Spears, pretty much. So, whether you are far right or far left, you pretty much you do love your dog. That you love your cat. You go to the SPCA. You adopt animals. You don't like some of the conditions that we have in farming, certain farming environments, and it's certainly, when you talk about mass farming and how animals are treated and sometimes never allowed to leave their cages before they're slaughtered and that sort of thing. It's something that so many people care about. And I have found places where I can reach across the aisle and get things done. And we'll talk about that, hopefully, some of the things that we have been able to accomplish this legislative cycle, this session. But it's been one of those few places where in this country today where it's so divisive that there are very few places where we've been able to join hands and work together. And animals, for me, at least anyway, has been one of those areas where I've had great success.
Well, perfect. And I think one of the significant legislative accomplishments we feel good about being a supporter of, and which you were involved in, and that is the inclusion of the ban against mink farming as part of the American Competes Act, as it passed the House and is now in front of a reconciliation committee. Talk about your involvement with the ban on mink farming.
Yeah, well, mink with COVID-19, mink farming alone has created three separate variants of COVID-19. The conditions for the mink, it's a perfect habitat for mutation and transmission and the creation of various variants of COVID-19. And, these animals are kept in small cages, usually unsanitary. They're overcrowded on top of it. And so, it was a real honor to work with Congresswoman DeLauro on this, because this is the first time that any type of, legislation or amended legislation passed out of the floor of the House that banned any kind of animal farming whatsoever. And that was attached to the Competes Act. And so it was historic in that regard, and getting that through both not only committee, but getting it to the floor for a vote and then actually having it pass out of the House. And then to be able to be a part of that in my first term in Congress was a really big deal for me, because I didn't think that kind of thing would be able to happen, and certainly so quickly. And so, it's something that we worked on together. And, it's important when you're talking about health and you're talking about science and COVID-19. It's an important issue in keeping our citizens safe and protected. So it's sort of twofold with how animals are treated, and then with the COVID-19 part of it, it's really truly a win-win.
Marty.
Well, Joe, I'm so elated to have Nancy here today. I have to tell you, I met her just a few days, I believe, after she was elected in Washington, D.C. at an event with my good friend from Alabama, Coach Tuberville, now a U.S. Senator, who was also elected then as well. And we have just gotten along terrifically. She has been, in my book, the number one Republican in Congress in the 117th Congress on animal protection issues. There's no one that's better. She has just stepped up in so many different ways for the voiceless we all care so deeply about. And what you mentioned earlier about, it being a conservative cause or not, I think is something that we see often where values aren't necessarily aligned with the parties in general. And to give another example of this, Mr. Pacelli is not here today because he's off with Senator Rand Paul, who's also one of the leaders of the FDA Modernization Act in Texas this weekend. And we have a great team of people, along with Congressman Vern Buchanan, and then Democrats from both the House and the Senate that are leading that legislation as well. That particular bill gets at cutting red tape, taking the 1938 statute that requires the FDA to have animal testing done for any drug that's approved, and make that an option, while still allowing that to exist, making an option where FDA can use the best science. So there's so many examples where, as Nancy said, people can reach across the aisle and work together. I know in the 7 bills that we have gotten signed into law in the past 4 years, we have had Democrats and Republicans leading in both chambers. And it's very, very important in Congress today, I think, to have that in order to get anything done, because we have seen so much polarization and divisiveness, and we need more people like Nancy Mace in Congress reaching across the aisle and working for these animals we all care so much about.
And I agree. And I also now I have a time to thank Marty too for certainly his leadership, but also his friendship to be able to work with our office on so many different issues. And it's been a really big deal for me, and it's meaningful work. And it's good work. Like you said, the FDA Modernization Act should be a very easy bipartisan win, taking very archaic legal requirements and putting, the best methods for testing rather than animal or non-animal methods, right? And that's where our focus really should be, and should be a really good, I would think, bipartisan piece of legislation that has huge meaning in the animal rights world and treating animals with better dignity and efficacy as well when it comes to testing. So I'm really, honored to be able to work with him, and I appreciate his leadership on so many issues. And he'll tell me these stories. I'm like, what are you talking about? And then all of a sudden we're doing another piece of legislation. And so just really appreciate the opportunity to work with animal wellness and be a part of the movement as well.
Yeah, I never get invited to dinner anywhere anymore because, they'll ask me what I do or what I'm involved in, and you start telling these stories, and pretty soon they don't want you there. Let me ask you to polish off the crystal ball. What do you foresee relative to mink and the reconciliation committee, this getting into the Senate, the joint version of it, and passing relative to minks?
Well, it's hard to say at this point. Unfortunately, sometimes when we take bills from the House, they go over to the Senate. Oftentimes, a lot of our amendments get stripped out. So it's hard to say if that amendment will stay in. And Marty will probably know more about where it is in the process technically in the Senate and what may or may not happen, since he's been working with senators over in that chamber throughout the process. I know because just because you get out of the House, you got a whole nother chamber to get through. And the Senate body is certainly more deliberative, but he probably has a better update on where we are in the odds of it staying with the Competes Act.
Yeah, I actually feel really good about it. There is a saying, at least when I worked in the House, that all good bills die in the Senate, but we hope that's not the case with this one. And it is in a conference committee. I did speak with Speaker Pelosi about it directly the night that it passed. She is supportive of the issue as well. And of course, that is very, very important when you're looking at this. And then our other fellow Republicans out there who may be a little bit more skeptical about the issue have definitely taken a look at it, because there is a fact that resonates with a lot of them, and that's that there are only 60 mink farms left in the United States, and most all of the pelts they are producing are going to be sold to the wealthy elite upper class as luxury garments in the People's Republic of China. So we're putting our country at a tremendous health risk simply to put luxury garments on the Chinese. Look, China's already caused our country enough pain, the whole world enough pain. That's not something we need to allow. And that's really resonating too. So I think we're going to get there. It is the first time we've ever seen any factory farming issue have a vote in the House or the Senate in American history, much less actually pass. And so we were elated because we actually only had one member of Congress that came and spoke out against it. And then it passed by an overwhelming majority with a ton of Republicans on board as well, and most of the Democrats. So we're feeling really good about it. I think the mink bill, the FDA Modernization Act, and the Big Cat Public Safety Act are the three bills that we feel can get done this year, have the best shot, and stand the best chance of getting signed into law. And Nancy's a leader of two of them. And she's also been a tireless advocate on the Big Cat Public Safety Act as well, and has talked to a ton of folks about that. And we appreciate her support of that. And I think nearly every other animal bill that's out there.
Yeah. And the other thing I will say too is that, Marty and I have had these conversations too. And sometimes elected officials are, weary or leaning into issues that either might be in their district or in their state or nearby. And the Big Cat bill, obviously, I don't represent Myrtle Beach or that area. But being that we were having that issue in South Carolina, just north of where I am, it's important still. It's even more important for elected officials to point these issues out, especially when they are in your backyard. And another example of that, I actually brought Marty down to Beaufort, South Carolina, a couple of months ago to introduce him to Monkey Island, which we were told growing up here in the Low Country that this was a sort of a guarded island. It was kind of a mystery that there were these rhesus monkeys on there, and that it was a sanctuary for monkeys that had been tested in scientific labs, and that was their retirement home and their retirement community. And as recently as 2 or 3 years ago, the former mayor of Beaufort even wrote an extensive op-ed on how these monkeys were not treated in labs, etc. Fast forward to end of 2021, I put a FOIA out there to find out that, hey, that's not what was happening. That of the 3,500 free-ranging rhesus monkeys on Monkey Island off the coast of Beaufort, 600 are captured and removed every year for gruesome scientific experiments where the monkeys are killed in the process run by NIAID. And so we went down there at the end of the year and toured and tried to get a glimpse of them down there. But the community was misled. And this is literally in my backyard. It's in my district. And when I found out, I was shocked and horrified. And I was like, we got to tell the community this is going on. We got to get it defunded. We got to stop this and, put an end to it, especially because it's in my backyard.
Let's shift to your work with Representative Mike Quigley from Chicago on the letter to the U.S. Postal Service. You wrote the inspector of the post office regarding the export of birds through our mail service. How did you get involved with that, and where does that issue stand today?
That is another opportunity that my staff brought to us. The role of I know everyone loves to hate the Postal Service, and this will be another reason for it. But I learned through my staff and through Mike Quigley that the USPS, there's some role with them transporting animals, specifically birds, for illegal cockfighting purposes. And so this letter was signed by 36 members of the U.S. House, including 24 Democrats and 12 Republicans. So it was very much done in a bipartisan spirit. And since 2002, the U.S. government has prohibited any interstate or foreign transport of animals for fighting purposes, and yet it's still going on. And so this was a good first step into at least alerting the Postal Service that we are keeping watch, that we are paying attention, and that this particular issue needs to be treated as a very high priority for our Postal Service.
Mm-hmm. What's been the reaction? I'm sorry. Go ahead, Marty.
No, I was just going to add, one of the things that brought this to light was Wayne actually went to Guam 3 or 4 years ago after we enacted a new law that had sort of a year delay on taking effect, and went undercover himself to a cockfight and actually got all of the postal records from the postmaster in Guam. We, through investigations of documents, Google Earth, traced back those addresses to where these people lived in South Carolina, in Alabama, in North Carolina, mostly the Southeast, but also Oklahoma, New Mexico, Utah, and California as well. And we found all of these shipments of gamecocks to the country of Guam, where there's no broiler production, there's no egg production. And if you were shipping birds for that purpose, they would be hens. They would not be roosters. So we did our due diligence, and this letter that Nancy sent is tremendously important because I think it really makes the USPS pay attention. And there were a lot of people there that knew they were shipping birds, but maybe didn't know why they were shipping them and what was going on. And this goes back to health risks. I just saw USDA release there is avian influenza that's been found in Indiana. I also believe Michigan today. I got an email about it. And then near the border of Canada. And these cockfighting shipments are also a prime recipe for disaster for these birds to transmit not only avian influenza, but Newcastle disease. And then that is another angle where we're talking about health and human safety, because the cockfighters that are fighting these birds, believe it or not, and I'm being a little bit graphic here, when they're in the middle of a fight, if a bird gets its lung punctured and that starts filling up with blood, they pull the bird, they stop the fight, pull the bird out of the fight, actually in a mouth-to-mouth resuscitation-like form, they suck the blood out of the bird. Now, if you have avian influenza or Newcastle disease or whatever the next new emerging zoonotic disease is, that's just a recipe for something to jump the barrier to the human species. So when we talk about this in the aspects of animal welfare and health and human safety, it really falls into what our motto is in Animal Wellness Action, and that's helping animals helps us all.
Absolutely.
Fascinating. Had no idea that was a thing, Marty. So you've taught me something new and unfortunate in this show. So thank you for that. I want to turn now to Representative Mace, to a topic that I think is maybe a little bit difficult for most folks to understand. At least it was for me originally, and that is checkoffs. Marty, maybe you could just say a couple of words about that, and then Representative Mace, tell us how you're involved in making that issue better for animals. Marty?
Yeah, no, Nancy is leading, along with Congresswoman Dina Titus, the Opportunities for Fairness in Farming Act that will create a system of checks and balances and transparency at the USDA's commodity checkoff programs that have been proven time and time again to have corruption and all sort of illegal activity going on through document and FOIA investigations and things like that. So cleaning up these quasi-governmental agencies that are actually putting farmers out of business with their own money is very important. I know that fits right into what Nancy is working on across the board on the federal government when we are dealing with all of this sort of bureaucracy and red tape that we have.
Go ahead. I'm sorry, Nancy. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say bureaucracy, red tape, fraud, and abuse. And this is an issue that we've heard from a lot of farmers on. And again, those farmers that I got introduced to that educated me on this issue were introduced to me by Marty as well. And so, and Wayne. And so, being able to be educated on these issues I had no idea before I came to Congress that this was a thing and this was happening and the kind of impact it would have on the farming communities. And again, working with animal wellness and being a part of it and getting on board and of course, educating my staff on it and why it's so important that we get involved like this and at this level was a really big deal for us as well.
All right, very good. I promised your scheduler that I would liberate you at the top of the hour. We're approaching that point. What else would you have the listeners of this podcast know about your work and what they can do to support it, even if they don't live in your district?
Yeah, one of the things that we have not talked about yet is some of the puppy testing that I was able to help expose late last year. We did a FOIA request and did a letter to Dr. Fauci over some beagle puppy testing. And, we learned that there were millions of dollars that were spent on about, 42 beagle puppies to cut out their vocal cords, to drug them, kill them, and then dissect them. We also learned through that process that they were also doing experiments or spending taxpayer dollars on experiments on beagle puppies again, that they had insects that ate them from the neck up and killed them. And so when you hear about these kinds of stories, you hear about the millions of dollars that are spent on this kind of horrific and barbaric testing. It's really important that we support members of Congress on both sides of the aisle that are educating the public and the media on what's happening. And I led a letter that was bipartisan with both Republicans and Democrats together. And sometimes, because it's so divisive, if you're a Republican, you get the far left attacking you, even though it's puppies. And then if you're a Democrat, you have the far left attacking you, even though it's puppies. Like, seriously, we're just so divisive. But when we have these opportunities to work together and really shed a light on what's going on with our tax dollars, even more broadly, it's disgusting and it's barbaric and it's gruesome. And it's horrific, and it's not something any of us would ever want to see a dime that we pay to the federal government be spent on. That's one of the big reasons that I support animal wellness and want to continue the work that I've started with folks on both sides of the aisle. I don't care if you have an R or a D by your name. This work is important. And where we can work together, I think one of the ways out of the divisions that we have in this country politically, because you literally cannot talk politics or the government at the kitchen table anymore, or at your work or at Christmas dinner or whatever, that we really think about how we communicate with each other and be supportive and continue this work. I think this is really one of the few ways out of the mess that we're in right now, and where we can work together to support each other to be able to do that. And I just really appreciate the opportunity to talk with y'all today and bring to light some of the work that we are doing and will continue to do. And just appreciate Marty and Wayne's leadership in animal wellness and bringing a lot of these issues to our attention as well.
All right, very good. Representative Mace from South Carolina, thank you so much for being on the show. Really do appreciate your appearance today and certainly all the work you're doing on behalf of animals in collaboration with our organization. All right, Marty, thanks for arranging Representative Mace to be on the show. Great interview and just a terrific person. I want to get to our legislative updates. So, good sir, why don't you give us the lowdown on what's happening on the Hill?
Yes, sir. Well, much of it we have already talked about with Nancy. Of course, as you now know, the minks in narrowly kept spaces are Super Spreaders Act in the form of an amendment to the Competes Act passed the House of Representatives a few weeks ago. That idea was conceived by Mr. Wayne Pacelli Nancy was the lead Republican, along with the Appropriations Chair, Democrat Rosa DeLauro. And they did a tremendous job leading that bill to passage. We only had one person that spoke out against it. And we're now working in the conference committee, as we talked about earlier. The FDA Modernization Act is really moving along with about 25 Republican and 25 Democrat co-sponsors in the House, now at 50. We have Senator Paul, Senator Braun, Senator Kennedy, Senator Lujan, Senator Booker, Senator Collins, and now most recently Senator Marco Rubio that's joined on the Senate side. So we need to get some more Democrats over there on the Senate side on that legislation. And then we have the Bear Protection Act, which is one that passed the Senate twice 2 decades ago when Mitch McConnell was the leader of the bill. It deals with bear poaching and bans the trade of bear gallbladders because their bile is used in traditional Chinese medicine and has been promoted as recently as 2020 by the Chinese government as a treatment for COVID-19 with no scientific basis for that messaging. So we're trying to stop that. We think we could get that one done. It never passed the House years ago. The dynamics are different there today than they were at that time. It stands a good shot. It's not one, it's more of an inside play. I'd say not one that we really are going to have like a ton of co-sponsors or anything. And then we have the Big Cat Public Safety Act, as we talked about now, with 255 co-sponsors in the House. Most recently, we got Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee, a Democrat from Texas, on, along with Congressman Stephen Palazzo, a Republican from Mississippi, and also have 45 co-sponsors in the Senate. We're dealing with some, quite honestly, very, very intricate decision-making involving the strategy on that bill. There are a couple of different options we're looking at. It could pass as a standalone in the House of Representatives on suspension, as they call it, the suspension calendar, and try to be sent by unanimous consent through a process they call a hotline process in the U.S. Senate, or we might attach it to something else. So that one's a little bit trickier, but it has the most support of any bill out there, with more co-sponsors than any other legislation. The other bills, we've been talking about and working on, quite honestly, I'm not going to sit here and tell you guys I think they're going to pass. I think most of the others that we've discussed at this stage might stand a chance at passing one chamber in this Congress, but probably not get signed into law. So we're putting our focus on those 4 main pieces of legislation on the federal level. And then we're also focusing on appropriations, the funding for all of the various aspects of enforcement of the Animal Welfare Act, Horse Protection Act, the cockfighting laws at both USDA and the Department of Justice, as we do every year. It's approach season. It's that time of year for 2023's funding. So we're spending a lot of time on that. And I think we're going to get a lot of wins this year. I think they're going to kind of trickle out. Of course, most of it will happen in the final quarter of the year. We're going to see the election really start to ramp up. That's going to be a key factor that can work for us or work against us, depending on the climate that we're dealing with. So we are just going to keep pressing along, and appreciate having Congresswoman Mace on. She's been terrific. All the other leaders of the bills that we have, we'll keep you updated. And I did want to add one more thing, just as a more broad, it's not a legislative update, but since we've talked about horse racing in the past, and we had one of the busiest weeks that we've had in the media, we had everyone from USA Today to People Magazine, ABC News contact us about Bob Baffert's removal as the trainer of the 2021 Kentucky Derby, because the title was taken away from the now late Medina Spirit, who died, unfortunately, last year after he won the Derby. There was a positive drug test. So horse racing is really big in the media right now. Keep your ears on, folks. Keep your eyes out. We're going to be doing a lot on that issue. It's February now. We're going to be doing a lot between now and the end of June, and you're going to see a lot. Even though we've already enacted federal legislation, there's much more to come.
Sure. And living in Louisville, Kentucky, I can tell you we are just a week or two away before Derby fever begins to build until the inevitable May climax of it. So it certainly will be an issue in my hometown, as I know it is increasingly across the country. Marty, thank you so much that was a terrific update. Appreciate it. Appreciate all your hard work. And I want to say thank you to and appreciate our audience. Thank you for listening to the Animal Wellness Podcast. Be sure to visit animalwellnessaction.org for all of our news and information, and to sign up for our news alerts. You can find us on Facebook and Twitter, and we invite you to subscribe to this podcast on iTunes, Podbean, Stitcher, or Spotify. I'm your host, Joseph Grove, and we'll be back soon with another episode of the Animal Wellness Podcast.